Aloha, this is Professor Porter. We're discussing the Federal Rules of Evidence, in particular into the weeds of hearsay, and we've moved past definitional hearsay under 801C. We've moved past not hearsay defined under 801D, and we're into the different batches of exceptions. And first we cover what I call the reliability exceptions under Federal Rule of Evidence 803 and all of its subparts. And we have to keep in mind, I include these slides every time I cover 803 videos because essentially these are options available to the proponent. The opponent has a familiar refrain. It's objection hearsay because they're embracing the definition of 801C, out of court statement for the truth of matter asserted. These are the many pathways below, these three arrows, these three boxes that are available to the proponent. The proponent can have arguments under that same definition to say, no, sir, we do not have a statement, we do not have out of court, and most popularly, it's not offered for the truth of the matter asserted. They might have some not hearsay defined pathways under 801D, either prior consistent statements, out of court identification, or statements against party opponents when a statement is made by or attributed to a party and offered by that party opponent. Here we have something different in a checklist type way. If it is not a definitional argument to make or not a not hearsay argument to make, then we're making our way to, well, it might be hearsay, an exception applies. And again, you see all the arguments available to the proponent. And really what we're saying here, what the rule makers are saying by offering us these exceptions, these narrow patches, these narrow circumstances, what we're really saying is the rule makers are telling us when a statement is made under these narrow circumstances, we're okay with its reliability. We're okay with the underlying policy of hearsay that we want to meet out-of-court declarants. We want to meet the declarant. We want to have firsthand information come from the witness stand so our opponents can cross-examine that declarant, and so our jury can evaluate the credibility of that declarant. With these circumstances, the circumstances that we're going to cover in 803 exceptions, including 803.1 and 803.2 that we're going to cover in this video, what we're really saying is if the statement is said and these circumstances and has these attributes and has these foundational requirements available to the proponent, then the proponent can argue, while it might be hearsay, an exception applies. That is, it's reliable enough under these circumstances. Not guaranteed to be true, not guaranteed to be trustworthy, just reliable enough to where we're able to say, we're good on meeting the declarant. We're good on evaluating the jury evaluating that declarant's credibility or the opponent being able to ask questions in cross-examination. And here's the three arguments we make. It's not hearsay. Most popularly, it's not offered for the truth of the matter asserted. Instead, it's offered for some other purpose. Or under 801D, it's not hearsay defined under 801D because it's prior inconsistent statement, a prior consistent statement, a prior out-of-court identification, or maybe a statement made by or attributed to a party offered by a party opponent. And then lastly, my first phrase that comes out of my mouth if I am the proponent responding to a hearsay objection at trial and I intend to use my kind of last part of the checklist, I intend to use an exception, particularly an exception under 803 as we're covering here. Your Honor, while it may be hearsay, an exception applies. Specifically, this is an excited utterance under 803.2 or other parts of the rule that we'll cover. Okay, here are the main ones that courses cover. Won't spend a lot of time. We're going to cover 803.1, present sense impressions, and 803.2, excited utterances. But here are the main ones that we cover, even though there's more than 20 in 803. Present sense impression, not a fan of how they've titled this rule. It's really imagine present spoken observations. It's someone sort of reporting as it's happening. So the visual that I like to use, and if you can think about, these exceptions have underlying policy too, just like hearsay itself and the entire Article 8 has underlying policy. Why do we have hearsay? Why do we allow this objection? It's because we want firsthand accounts. We want a chance to probe the reliability, the sincerity of the declarant, the reliability of the statement. We want a chance to ask cross-examination questions for our opponent. We want an opportunity for our jury to view and evaluate credibility. But this is one of those circumstances we say, if this happens, if the out of court statement happens in these circumstances, it's reliable enough. And really, it's because there's no opportunity for reflection. We're not remembering something. We're not stating something. We are talking as it's happening. So the image that I like to use in class is imagine that you're on the phone with your close friend. I'm on the phone with my close friend Dave, and I'm looking out the window as I'm on the phone with him talking about something else. And right away, I'm looking out at the street and I see something very distinctive. I see someone roll up on a bike, hop off the bike, throw the bike to the side, and start going right into jimmying a car on the sidewalk. I know whose car it is. I know that's not the owner. I see this happening. I'm basically watching a crime taking place of a breaking and entering of a car. And immediately I shift from the conversation with my friend on the phone to describing what I'm seeing. So I am reporting as it's happening. I am the newspaper reporter for my close friend over the phone. And what the rule makers tell us is because these are my present spoken observations, I'm telling you what I'm seeing as I'm doing it. Now he's doing this, now he's doing that. I'm saying it in real time reporting. That's what the rule makers have decided is a present sense impression. It's something that I'm reporting contemporaneously or immediately thereafter, a really tight timeline. So imagine it comes down to trial and I'm not around. I went away. I'm not going to be there. I'm not going to be a witness. I was the declarant. I'm the one that said it out loud while it was happening. But instead, for other reasons, they call my friend on the other side of the phone. And you can imagine the line of questioning that leads up to getting into Porter's statements when he's questioning my friend Dave. Were you on the phone with him? Yes. Had you talked to him before? Yes. Did you recognize his voice? Yes. Did you know the context of our conversation? Yes. What were you talking about immediately prior to his observations out the window? Oh, we were talking about sports. We were talking about current events. We were talking about whatever. At some time, did you come to understand that Porter was looking out the window? Yes. What did he say? And you see all those foundational questions that go into leading up to and maybe even satisfying an authentication objection, everything that goes into essentially that moment of what did Porter say? Well, Porter is the declarant. My friend Dave, who's on the other end of the phone line, he's the witness. So this is one of those circumstances where we don't get to meet the declarant. We don't get a first-hand account. We don't get to ask follow-up questions of Porter. We don't get to have the jury evaluate the credibility of Porter. It has all the problems of hearsay. So as the opponent, especially for your exam taking self, you are going to say objection hearsay as the opponent. And you're going to explain it by embracing this is an out of court. Certainly, I was in my living room. Statement. I'm making a statement. I'm telling you about all the activities of the robber who's going through the car. And we're offering it for the truth, right? We want to get it in purportedly at a trial, for reasons that we're getting into, that this is the person and here's what they were doing, for the truth of whatever I'm saying, in quotes, describing this breaking and entering as it's happening. So the opponent's absolutely right. They're absolutely right to object. What did he say? This is a witness, Dave, who's quoting someone else on the outside, Porter, who said the statement. So the declarant is Porter, the witness is Dave. He's quoting what someone else said. It's an out-of-court statement offered for the truth. Don't miss it. Don't skip it. Objection hearsay on behalf of the opponent. Then we go into, the options for the proponent. The proponent could say something definitional. They could maybe even make an argument that doesn't apply here, but a not hearsay defined argument. But really what we're talking about is this meets the narrow circumstances of an 8031 present sense impression, because what you would say if you made your way over to sidebar, objection hearsay, says the opponent. Counsel who sponsored Dave as a witness makes their way over to sidebar. Your Honor, while this may be hearsay, an exception applies. This is a present sense impression under 8031 because the declarant was describing events as he was perceiving them contemporaneously, not even immediately thereafter, contemporaneously talking while he's observing. It has enhanced reliability. It has sincerity because there is no reflection. He's literally saying the things as he's describing them. The objection would be overruled because the proponent met the foundational requirements of this exception. So sure, the opponent met the foundational requirements of their 801C, this is hearsay, but as soon as the proponent can meet the foundational requirements of present sense impression under 8031, and do so against these definitions, right? And the conversation would narrow. The opponent, do you have anything to say? Now it comes down to, does 803.1 apply, as proponent says, or not? That's the argument you can make. The objection is overruled, and the statement, Porter's statement about what he observed looking out the window, would be admitted or allowed in as testimony. Similarly, when we talk about 803.2, it's a kind of a related exception. We're talking about an excited utterance, another title that I absolutely hate because not too many people think of when they're excited and they're going to say something that it's going to be an utterance. So excited statements, look out for exclamation points, look out for any event by which a normal declarant perceiving those events would be excited. So the typical one that you hear in hypos is running from a burning building, or you've just seen a car crash and you're the one calling into 911, something like that, right? There's some event by which we would justify whatever comes out of our mouth to be, kind of in that excited, heightened tone where it would justify exclamation points at the end. So look out for exclamation points. And the foundational requirements, there are a few. It has to be a statement, and a sort of excited statement with this. Look at the content of that statement. Look for the exclamation point. I just saw the red car crash into the yellow car, and I think people are hurt! Exclamation point. It's an excited statement. But then the second two foundational requirements, it has to be while the person is still excited and about the excited event. 1, 2, 3. Has to be an excited statement. Has to be while still excited from the event, and it has to be about the excited event. So usually, typically, if you have the exclamation point and you have the content of the statement, you can evaluate all three and pay close attention to those timeline type elements. It's a little longer timeline than a present sense impression under 803.1. Right? It's not immediately thereafter or contemporaneous. It's while you're excited. So if depending on how crazy the thing you saw, how excitable the event that you witnessed as the declarant, you might be able to be excited for some amount of time. What's definitively not going to be included is that some amount of time is not going to last weeks or months, right? If they say it's 2 weeks after the statement, you're probably going to have to find another excited event, and maybe your excited event is going through it or talking about it again or being re-victimized or whatever the circumstance, but it's probably not going to be the underlying event of the fire, of the car crash weeks later. Some kind of type. And remember, we're making arguments. So if I'm the opponent and I'm objecting, I'm basically saying this is not a court statement for truth of the matter asserted. I'm objecting to hearsay because we're going to say, upon running from the fire, when Porter was right next to the coworker and said, I can't believe that Dan did this. I can't believe that he blew up the work like he said he was going to do. I've said that statement, right? And I've done it in a heightened tone. We're literally running from the burning building. Again, I'm not around for trial. I'm the declarant. I'm saying it to my coworker, Donna. Donna is going to be the witness at trial. At trial, you can imagine those foundational questions leading up to it. Donna, what happened? Oh, there was this big fire. There was an explosion. What did you do? I ran. Was anyone around you when you were running? Sure, I was running with Porter stride for stride. We were leaving the burning building. At that time, did Porter say something to you? Yes. Before you get into what he said, how would you describe his manner at that time? Like the rest of us, he was frantic, he was excited, he was yelling, everything, parenthetical, everything that he said justified having an exclamation point at the back end. And then it would be the absolute pivotal question. What did Porter say? Again, Porter is the declarant on the outside. We're trying to get into that statement. And Donna is the witness. So again, you're justified as the opponent. This is an out of court. It's right outside the building when it's burning. It's a statement where he's saying, I can't believe the coworker did this like he said he was going to do. And it's offered clearly for its truth of the matter asserted because they're trying to get into the fact that probably this person was responsible for the fire. So they have the 1, 2, 3. They have the foundational requirements of this exception for 803.2 excited utterance. And again, it shifts back to the proponent, the person that called my coworker Donna to the stand. They're over at sidebar. They have options. They have definitional arguments under 801C. They have definitional arguments under 801D. Or they go to the wonderful world of 803 exceptions, reliability, and they say, I have one of those narrow circumstances where the rule makers tell us the circumstances under which this were made make this statement reliable enough. Because here I have the foundational requirements to the exception. As the proponent, I have the foundational requirements of the exception. This was absolutely an excited statement. You can see by what it was, the context that it was said, and the exclamation point at the end. It was said while he was still excited, while Porter was still excited. He was literally running from the building. There's no question, no argument as to what he was excited. Even if it were minutes later, hours later, and he's sitting down, he could still be, in that excited state and talking about this event that just happened to him that was so personal. And most critically, and especially when you get to different testing with the bar and the like, his statement was about the fire and about the excited event, about the thing that made him get excited. Clearly, if his statement was something else that was unrelated, that he really prefers peanut butter and banana sandwiches over peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, and that happens to be what he's yelling when he's running out of the building, it could be relevant. It could be important to trial. It could be something that the proponent would want to advance at trial. It just doesn't have to do with this excited event. It's not connected to this excited event, so therefore it fails as it relates to that one foundational requirement. So if you satisfy, again, if the proponent satisfies the foundational requirements because the statement's about the excited event, about the fire, then it's going to be the objection is overruled and the testimony is allowed into Porter's statement from Donna, the witness. If the statement is something else about what kind of sandwiches he likes, even if it's relevant at trial, it's going to be the objection is sustained because the foundational requirements of the exception were not met. And if the objection is sustained, then the testimony will not be allowed or the testimony will be excluded at trial. Counsel with Donna, move on to something else other than Porter's statement. It's not going to see the light of the day before these jurors.